Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name's Sophie and this channel is chronicling my journey of living my best life with multiple chronic health conditions. Today, as the title suggests, I will be talking about my maladaptive coping mechanisms. There is a trigger warning on this video simply because of the topics. I don't plan on getting into any details. I'm not going to be talking about numbers or anything like that, but I don't want to trigger anyone. I'll start with talking about the eating disorder. When I was really young, for whatever reason, I would basically almost forget I had food in my mouth, and then it would get all mushy and whatever, and I would end up spitting it out. I don't really think it was done in any sort of eating disorder type of way. I'm not really sure what was going on with that. Then, as I was a little older, I very clearly remember wanting to see how little I could eat and then how long it took me to eat normally again. So even in late elementary/middle school, I was definitely aware that if you did not eat a lot, it took longer to eat normally. And I don't remember why I was doing it. I just remember that that was what I was doing. And I think it might have had to do with the abuse and having to earn food and everything. So just sort of wanting to get used to not eating a lot. But again, I don't really remember why I was doing it, just that I had those thoughts of, let me see how little I can eat and then how long it takes me to eat normally again. Then I would also get comments about certain body parts of mine and how they were big and whatever. I don't really remember it bothering me, but that might have eventually played into the beginning of the anorexia. I don't really know. All I remember about the beginning of the eating disorder was being measured for a dance uniform and not liking the size I was measured into and deciding to start eating a little less to be a little smaller. And before anyone says, oh, it's dance, they always want you to lose weight. It wasn't like that at all. There were people of all shapes and sizes in my dance class. No one was ever told to lose weight or anything like that. But that sort of started it, and then from there it just sort of spiraled into eating very little and thinking I needed to deserve to eat, to deciding I didn't deserve to eat, which probably again goes back to the abuse. But it just sort of spiraled out of control. It got to the point where eating would cause flashbacks, and so then obviously I would want to avoid the flashback, so I would avoid eating. And it was very strange because on one hand I was getting a lot of compliments because I was small and I guess people were envious, and then on the other hand I was getting comments that I was too thin and people were worried. At the time, I eventually was in therapy, and my therapist had talked to my doctor, and my doctor had basically said he wasn't worried about my weight and I would need to lose quite a bit more weight before they would be concerned about it. I eventually went to an eating disorder specialist who said that I should have been hospitalized a long time ago, and that is eventually what happened. As I said in a previous video, I was inpatient for 5 weeks, and that's sort of how I recovered. It was not something I'd want to do again, just because it wasn't realistic. Like, their rules weren't going to be helpful once you left, and I almost feel like they were setting you up for failure in some ways. I think I was a little different in that talks of food, calories, body image, stuff like that didn't trigger me. I was more triggered by the act of eating itself at that point. but they just had rules that you couldn't talk about like food or anything like that. And you never learned, if that was one of your triggers, you were never learning how to cope with that, because obviously in the real world people talk about food and exercise and dieting and calories and all of that all the time. So I almost felt like inpatient's the perfect place to be exposed to that type of talk, so you learn how to deal with your triggers, but that's not what it was like at all. There was also no like therapy at all. So I never really dealt with my triggers, and no one dealt with their triggers at all, because they had group therapy, but it was more on like changing your thoughts or nutrition classes and stuff like that, which, I don't know, wasn't helpful to me at all. But getting to college afterwards and then finding weightlifting and having a reason to be recovered and a positive coping skill was definitely helpful. But that's sort of how the anorexia developed and how I recovered. And then my other maladaptive coping mechanism would be the self-injury. And I don't really know when it started. I know when my more normal self-injury started. By that I mean I know when I started cutting myself, but I don't remember when I started self-injuring to begin with. I remember I would like purposefully wreck my bike, stuff like that, because, and again, I very clearly remember telling myself I had to get used to the pain. I would be sort of jealous if my friends got hurt, because I'm like, oh, like, I bet that was painful and I need to get used to pain. But I don't know, it was very weird, for sure, looking back. Obviously, I didn't tell anyone when I was really, really young, like in elementary, that I was purposefully wrecking my bike or anything like that. And then when I was 14, I cut myself for the first time. I don't know where I got the idea from. I don't remember seeing it in any movies, reading about it anywhere, so I don't know where I got the idea from. But that sort of started the self-injury trajectory, and for a while it was a pretty regular thing, I would say. And then I went a period of probably almost a decade without cutting myself. I'm not going to say without self-injuring, because I think I would do things like dig my nails into my skin and stuff like that, which people may not consider self-injury, may consider self-injury, I don't really know. But I do believe I was doing that in the interim, but I was definitely not cutting myself. And then when 2020 happened, and everything with my health and the doctors not being very helpful, I sort of fell back into self-injuring. And it's probably been about a year now since I self-injured. I don't really know. I don't keep track. But it's still a thought that I have at times. And so far, I have been able to not engage in that maladaptive coping strategy. I've also had very specific urges when I did get really severe urges. And I know people say like, oh, like just get through it, it'll go away. But because mine are triggered more from like a PTSD type aspect, mine don't go away. Or they can take months to go away. So it gets really hard to continually be fighting the urge when it just seems so simple to give into it, and then it goes away, and the thoughts go away, the memories go away, and everything else. And I do have very specific ways that I will self-injure. I've only ever cut myself in terms of methodology, but sometimes it will be more angry than others. I'm trying to not get into any details, but there are two ways I would do it depending on the purpose it's serving, whether I am doing it because I am very numb and almost dissociated, or whether I think I deserve to be punished. Those would sort of be two different reactions on my part, and those are the two reasons I often self-injure. And I also get urges to self-injure in a specific location, be it my arms or my ankles, which is one reason I have tattoos on my arms and my ankles, because I know I won't self-injure over them. At least up until this point, I've never self-injured over any of my tattoos. That is one reason I get them in the location I get them in. And so far, so good in that regard. But it hasn't been as much of a struggle recently to not self-injure. I haven't really had any strong urges. I've definitely had thoughts and moderate urges, but I have been able to talk myself out of it and just sort of tell myself that it's not going to solve anything, or, like, well, where you want to do it, you have tattoos, so you can't do that type of thing. So the tattoos have definitely been very helpful in terms of not self-injuring. And then in terms of the anorexia, I just don't have the want to not eat. I don't know. It's weird. I'm sure if people who know me and how much I can eat now knew I had anorexia before, they would be kind of shocked, because I have no problem eating at all. I do have a lack of appetite sometimes, but I do make sure that I eat. So it hasn't really been an issue. I don't know if just because of the weightlifting and stuff like that, which I'll get into in the next video about my positive coping mechanisms, that I sort of know to do those type of things I need to be like fed, and that sort of got me out of the mindset of needing to deserve food or something. But thankfully I've never relapsed, and it's never been an issue since I was hospitalized in 2005. But those are sort of my maladaptive coping mechanisms and how I've overcome the anorexia, which I talked about in a previous video, about how I figured out, or how I managed to overcome it by stopping the behaviors and then being held accountable and then finding something that's not compatible with it, which for me was weightlifting. And ever since, it's just not been an issue for me. And the self-injury, I'll probably always say, is a work in progress, simply because I thought I would never do it again after not doing it for 10 years. But apparently life happens and old habits die hard. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. I'm sorry it's another long one, but I just want to be open and honest with you guys. So if I need to make a video talking about any of my mental health struggles, you guys sort of have a background of what I'm dealing with, where I'm coming from, and all of that. So I hope you guys are having a good day whenever it is you are seeing this, and I will talk to you next time. Bye, guys.